The little boy's lips were trembling from the cold, but he wasn't crying for himself. He stood on a crowded city sidewalk, holding a tiny baby wrapped in a thin, worn blanket. His small hands were red from the freezing winter air. People rushed past without stopping. Cars splashed through puddles left behind by the morning rain. Nobody seemed to notice the two children standing alone. Then the boy looked up at a tall man stepping out of a black luxury car and whispered words that would change all three of their lives forever. "Sir, my baby sister is freezing." Before we continue this emotional story, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Studio if you believe kindness and second chances can change lives. Your support helps spread stories that inspire hope and compassion. The city of Brighton Heights was alive with activity that cold winter morning. Office workers hurried toward glass skyscrapers while street vendors tried to attract customers. Among the crowd was 11-year-old Rowan Hart, a boy who had learned more about survival than most adults ever would. Rowan carried his 2-year-old sister, Ivy, against his chest. Their parents had passed away in a tragic accident nearly a year earlier. Since then, life had become a daily battle. They had bounced between temporary shelters, abandoned buildings, and kind strangers willing to help for a night or two. But kindness had limits. Winter did not. The previous evening had been one of the coldest nights of the year. Rowan had spent the night awake, wrapping his own jacket around Ivy while shivering beside her. By morning, he was exhausted and terrified. Ivy's tiny fingers felt like ice. He knew he needed help. Not tomorrow. Not later. Now. Several people walked by as he stood near the entrance of one of the city's most expensive office towers. Some avoided eye contact. Others looked briefly before continuing on. Rowan felt invisible. Then a sleek black car stopped at the curb. The rear door opened. Out stepped Callum Vance, the 42-year-old CEO of a billion-dollar technology company. Newspapers often described him as brilliant, disciplined, and intimidating. Employees respected him, but few knew much about his private life. Callum had built an empire from nothing. Yet despite all his success, he carried a loneliness that expensive suits and business achievements could never hide. As he headed toward the building entrance, Rowan gathered his courage. The boy approached carefully. His voice was barely audible. "Sir, my baby sister is freezing." Callum stopped. Something about those words struck him harder than any business challenge he had ever faced. His eyes moved to the baby. Ivy's cheeks were pale. Her blanket was thin. Her tiny body trembled. For a moment, the noise of the city seemed to disappear. Callum removed his expensive wool coat without hesitation. The icy wind instantly hit his shirt sleeves, but he didn't care. He wrapped the coat around both children, carefully tucking it around the baby. Ivy immediately snuggled into the warmth. Rowan looked stunned. No one had ever reacted so quickly. No one had ever treated them like they mattered. Callum crouched to the boy's eye level. For the first time in years, Rowan saw genuine concern in an adult's face. The CEO called his driver and instructed him to bring the car around immediately. Within minutes, the children were sitting inside the warm vehicle. The heater hummed softly as color slowly returned to Ivy's cheeks. As they drove through the city, Rowan nervously explained their situation. Callum listened. Every word felt heavier than the last. He learned about the accident. The shelters. The hunger. The fear. The night spent wondering if they would make it through another winter storm. By the time they arrived at Callum's home, something inside him had changed. The mansion stood on a hill overlooking the city. It was beautiful, spacious, and filled with everything money could buy. Yet it had always felt empty. That morning, for the first time, it felt different. The house staff quickly prepared warm meals and clean clothes. Doctors were called to ensure Ivy was healthy. Rowan watched everything with disbelief. He kept expecting someone to tell them to leave. Nobody did. Days turned into weeks. The children remained in the mansion while social services worked through the legal process surrounding their case. During that time, Callum discovered something unexpected. He enjoyed hearing Ivy laugh. He enjoyed helping Rowan with homework. He enjoyed having people around who didn't care about stock prices, business deals, or public image. The mansion was no longer silent. It was alive. Meanwhile, Rowan slowly began trusting again. The boy who once slept with one eye open started sleeping peacefully through the night. His grades improved. His smile returned. Most importantly, he no longer carried the weight of protecting the entire world on his small shoulders. One evening, Callum found Rowan standing by a window overlooking the city lights. The boy stared quietly at the skyline. A year earlier, those lights had represented uncertainty and fear. Now they represented possibility. Callum realized that these children had transformed his life just as much as he had transformed theirs. For years, he had chased success believing it would bring happiness. Instead, happiness had arrived unexpectedly in the form of a brave little boy and his baby sister. Several months later, after extensive reviews and approvals, a life-changing decision became official. Callum became their legal guardian. The day the paperwork was finalized, Rowan cried for the first time since losing his parents. Not tears of sadness. Tears of relief. For the first time in nearly a year, he no longer worried about where they would sleep. He no longer feared the future. He finally had a home. As the seasons changed, the family grew stronger together. Rowan excelled in school. Ivy became a cheerful, energetic child who filled every room with laughter. Callum continued running his company, but his priorities had shifted forever. He often remembered that freezing winter morning. One simple sentence had changed everything. "Sir, my baby sister is freezing." If this story is touching your heart so far, please like, comment, and share this video. Stories of compassion remind us that even small acts of kindness can create life-changing miracles. Special request, comment below with the word hope if you believe one act of kindness can transform someone's future. Years later, Rowan stood on a stage accepting a scholarship award. Hundreds of people applauded as he shared his journey. Sitting proudly in the audience were Callum and Ivy. Looking at them, Rowan understood something important. Family isn't always the people you're born with. Sometimes family is the person who stops when everyone else keeps walking. The person who notices your pain. The person who chooses kindness when it would be easier to look away. On the coldest day of their lives, a stranger had offered warmth. That warmth became safety. Safety became trust. Trust became love. And love became a family. Because sometimes the greatest miracles don't arrive with fame or fortune. Sometimes they arrive wrapped inside a simple coat on an ordinary winter morning. And sometimes, one act of compassion is enough to change an entire lifetime. I hope this fits your YouTube storytelling style for Kindness Studio, emotional, cinematic, inspiring, and complete in a single part.